The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows that stretched across the cracked pavement of the neighborhood. The air was thick with the scent of impending rain, a tension that mirrored the unease in Henry's heart. He stood on the porch of his modest home, a place that had sheltered his family for decades, the walls steeped in memories of laughter and love. But today, the air felt different, heavy, suffocating, as if the house itself was holding its breath, waiting for the inevitable. It was a day like any other, yet it would mark the beginning of the end. His son, Marcus, had come by with an urgency that felt foreign to him, as if he were a stranger wearing the skin of the boy Henry once knew. The conversation had turned quickly, the words slicing through the air like daggers. "Dad, we need to talk about the house." Those words echoed in Henry's mind, a cruel refrain that replayed in slow motion. How had it come to this? The house, the very foundation of their family, was now a bargaining chip in Marcus's desperate game. He had been struggling for months, entangled in debts that Henry had sensed but never fully understood. The truth had been a ticking time bomb, and now it had exploded, leaving only shards of trust scattered across the floor. "Dad, I've got a buyer," Marcus had said, his voice strained but firm. "I need you to sign over the deed. It's the only way." The plea in his son's eyes was overshadowed by the steeliness of his resolve. There was no hint of remorse, no acknowledgement of the betrayal that lay beneath his words. Just a cold calculation that had Henry's stomach churning. "Marcus, this is our home," Henry had replied, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "You can't just sell it out from under me." The truth was, he had always been the quiet one, the father who blended into the background, a gentle giant underestimated by those around him. But he was not without power. He had sacrificed dreams and desires for the sake of family. And this was the ultimate betrayal, a knife thrust deep into the heart of his love. But Marcus had pressed on, the desperation in his tone now mingled with frustration. "You don't understand. I'm in deep, Dad. It's not just about the house. It's about my life. I have to do this." The weight of those words hung between them, and Henry felt it crush him, the realization that it was not just the house at stake but the very essence of their relationship. And then the bombshell dropped. Marcus had aligned himself with a shady character, a man whose name lingered in dark corners of the neighborhood like a ghost. Henry felt his heart race as he imagined the dangers Marcus had invited into their lives. This was more than just a financial crisis. It was a descent into a world of greed and desperation that threatened to consume them both. The thought of his son mingling with such company made bile rise in his throat. The finality of that moment hung thick in the air, the silence a tangible thing. Henry had felt a flicker of anger, a pulse of indignation that surged through him, but he had buried it beneath layers of pain. He knew that showing weakness would only embolden Marcus, that he had to play the long game. "I'll think about it," he had said finally, his voice low and controlled, masking the storm within. As Marcus left, a sense of foreboding settled over Henry like a shroud. The door closed with a soft click, and in that moment, he was alone, surrounded by the ghosts of his past. His wife's laughter echoing through the halls, the warmth of family gatherings, the sense of security that had always enveloped him. But now that security felt like a fragile illusion, one that could shatter at any moment. He stood there, staring out at the fading light, the world outside blurring into a watercolor of shadows and uncertainty. The weight of betrayal wrapped around him like a heavy blanket, smothering his spirit. But beneath that heaviness lay something deeper, a flicker of resolve igniting within him. He would not allow this to be the end. He would not be the victim of his own son's greed. In the depths of his mind, a plan began to take shape, a hidden strategy that only he could see. For too long, he had played the role of the victim, the silent observer in his own life. But he was more than that. He was a man with resources, a man who had built something out of nothing, who had weathered storms that would have broken others. And though the weight of betrayal felt insurmountable, it also fueled a fire within him, one that would not be extinguished. Henry stepped back inside, the door creaking softly as it closed behind him. The familiar scent of old wood and worn furniture greeted him, a reminder of the life he had built. He would not let it slip away. He could feel the pulse of the house, the heartbeat of generations echoing in the walls, and he knew he would fight to protect it. But first, he needed to gather his strength, to remind himself of the resources he had hidden away, the connections he had forged over the years. The world outside might see him as weak, but he knew the truth. He was a man of quiet power, and the time for reckoning was coming. As he sat down at his cluttered desk, the soft light of the lamp illuminating the room, he began to sift through old papers, searching for the threads of his past that could weave a new future. A photograph of his late father caught his eye, a man who had taught him the value of resilience and the importance of standing firm in the face of adversity. He traced the outline of the photograph with his fingers, a silent vow forming in his heart. They would think they had won. They would think he was broken. But they had no idea. They had no idea what he was capable of, what lay beneath the surface of his quiet demeanor. And when the time was right, he would show them. He would let them think they had won, only to reveal the truth. He owned their debt, and he would collect. The storm in the sky began to brew, thick clouds rolling in like dark whispers of betrayal. Henry stood at the threshold of his modest home, his heart a heavy stone in his chest. The air was charged with tension, crackling like electricity, as he gazed at Marcus walking toward him, his son's silhouette sharp against the dimming light. Each footstep on the cracked pavement felt like a countdown, each one echoing with the weight of their fractured trust. "Dad," Marcus said, his voice strained, nearly swallowed by the gusts of wind that began to pick up. He glanced down, shuffling his feet, a gesture that was all too familiar. A child caught in the web of his own choices. "We need to talk." Henry's throat tightened. He could see the urgency in Marcus's eyes, but beneath that urgency lay a cold calculation, a desperation that mirrored the shadows pooling at his feet. "You mean you need to talk?" he replied, his voice steady yet laced with an edge that surprised even him. "You've already made your decisions." The silence that hung between them felt palpable, a living entity that pressed against Henry's chest. The scent of damp earth filled the air, mingling with the faint aroma of the lilacs in the garden, their vibrant colors a stark contrast to the turmoil brewing within him. "It's not what you think," Marcus continued, his words tumbling out, frantic as the wind. "I didn't want it to come to this." "Didn't want what?" "To sell the house." Henry's voice rose, carrying a mixture of hurt and indignation. "This house is all we have left, Marcus. It's not just a roof over our heads. It's our legacy. Your grandfather built it with his own hands. You can't just throw it away like it's nothing." Marcus clenched his jaw, the tension in his posture radiating like heat waves on a summer day. "I'm not throwing it away. I'm trying to save us. You don't understand what I've been dealing with." His voice cracked, revealing a glimpse of the turmoil beneath his bravado. "You think it's easy for me? I'm drowning in this debt, and if I don't act now." "Act now," Henry interrupted, his heart pounding in his ears. "By selling the only place that holds our family together? You think that will fix everything?" A flicker of guilt crossed Marcus's face, but it was quickly replaced by a steely resolve. "It's not just about the house, Dad. It's about survival. You know how the world works now. You either adapt, or you get crushed." Henry felt the ground beneath him shift, the familiar solid earth now feeling treacherous. "And you think I'm just going to stand here while you sell us out?" The words hung in the air, heavy with accusation. "You don't even see what you're doing." The wind picked up, rustling the leaves of the old oak tree that stood sentinel in their yard. It was a tree that had witnessed generations of laughter and tears, a symbol of their resilience. He could almost hear it whispering to him, urging him to stand firm, to fight against the tide of despair that threatened to sweep them away. "I'm trying to protect you," Marcus shouted, the raw emotion in his voice echoing like thunder. "This isn't just about the money. It's about the future. I'm doing what I have to do. By sacrificing our past?" Henry's voice trembled, a mixture of anger and sorrow surging within him. "You don't have to carry this burden alone. We can figure it out together, but not by giving up what little we have left." Marcus's expression shifted, the facade of control slipping for just a moment. "You don't get it, do you? I've already made deals. They're not going to wait for you to make up your mind. They want their money, and they want it now." Henry's breath caught in his throat. The realization hit him like the first drops of rain against his skin. The shady character Marcus had mentioned, the deals made in the shadows. "Who are you involved with?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper, a sense of dread curling in his stomach. "What kind of people are you dealing with?" Marcus turned away, the tension in his shoulders tightening. "It doesn't matter. What matters is that I have to fix this. I have to sell the house. It's the only way to keep them off my back." Henry's heart sank. He felt the world around him closing in, the weight of his son's choices pressing down like the thickening storm clouds above.
"No."
"You will not sell this house. Not while I still breathe." He stepped back, retreating into the dim light of the living room, where the familiar scent of aged wood and old books enveloped him like a warm embrace. He needed to think, to regroup. The walls, adorned with family photographs, whispered stories of love and resilience, reminding him of what was at stake. This house was more than bricks and mortar. It was his fortress, a testament to their family's strength. As he moved to the old oak desk in the corner, he noticed the old ledger buried beneath a pile of forgotten papers. It was a relic of his father's meticulous record-keeping, a record of debts paid and promises fulfilled. Henry brushed away the dust, revealing the faded ink that told tales of struggles and triumphs. Each name listed held a story, a connection to the past that anchored him to this very moment. He opened the ledger, his fingers tracing the words, and a plan began to form, a flicker of hope igniting in the depths of his resolve. "I'm not going to let them think they won," he murmured to himself, the determination settling in his bones. "I still have resources. I still have options." As the first drops of rain began to patter against the windows, he could feel the storm outside mirroring the turmoil within. But instead of feeling overwhelmed, he felt a quiet strength rising within him. He would reclaim what was his. He would protect his family's legacy. "Henry!" Marcus's voice came from the doorway, tinged with uncertainty. "What are you doing?" Henry turned to face his son, resolve etched on his features. "I'm going to show you that there's more to this than just running away. We're not selling the house. We're going to take control of this situation." "Dad, you don't understand," Marcus began, but Henry raised a hand, silencing him. "I do understand, Marcus. You're scared. You've made mistakes, and I won't deny that. But I won't let fear dictate our lives. We'll face this together, but on our terms." The rain began to fall in earnest, a steady rhythm that matched the beat of Henry's heart. He felt the coolness of the droplets against the warm wood of the desk, and an idea sparked, a potential lifeline. "We need to gather information, find out who you're really dealing with. I'll use the connections I have. There are people who owe me, just as you owe them." Marcus's expression shifted, uncertainty mingling with a flicker of hope. "You really think that could work?" "It has to work," Henry said, the weight of his resolve filling the room. "We're going to turn this around. I'll help you, but you have to trust me. No more secrets." The storm outside raged on, the wind howling like a wraith as the rain lashed against the windows. But within the confines of their home, Henry felt a shield forming. The weight of betrayal lingered, but so did the strength of family. Together, they would navigate the storm, and Henry would ensure that the legacy of their family home remained intact. As Marcus stepped closer, the tension began to ebb, replaced by a fragile understanding. "Okay, Dad," he said, his voice softer now. "Let's do this together." For the first time that evening, Henry allowed himself a small smile, a flicker of optimism in the midst of darkness. He knew the road ahead would be fraught with challenges, but he also knew that they would face it side by side, undeterred. With their past as their guide and the future waiting just beyond the horizon, they would reclaim their strength. The storm continued to rage outside, but within the walls of their home, a quiet determination began to rise, echoing against the backdrop of thunder and rain. This was just the beginning, and Henry was ready to take back control. The storm clouds above swirled like the chaos in Henry's mind, dark and brooding, as he stood at the window, watching raindrops race each other down the glass. Each bead mirrored his thoughts, quick, frantic, and desperate. He couldn't shake the unsettling feeling that the calm they had momentarily achieved was merely the eye of the storm. Henry turned away from the window, the soft creak of the floorboards beneath his feet a familiar comfort that felt strangely out of place. The house, with its faded wallpaper and worn-out furniture, held memories like ghosts trapped in the corners. Memories of laughter, of warmth, of his father's sturdy hands guiding him through life's lessons. Now, those memories felt like shackles, binding him to a past he feared he was losing forever. He glanced at the clock on the wall. It ticked steadily, a metronome of anxiety marking the time until Marcus returned. The seconds felt heavy, pressing down on his chest. He wanted to believe they could navigate this together, but doubt gnawed at him like a hungry beast. Could he truly trust Marcus? The boy had made choices that had led them into this mess, and yet there was a flicker of hope in Henry's heart, a stubborn ember refusing to be extinguished. The sound of the front door creaking open pulled him from his thoughts. Marcus stepped inside, drenched from the rain, water pooling around his feet like the weight of his decisions. His hair clung to his forehead, and for a moment, Henry saw a flash of the boy he once knew. Innocent, wide-eyed, unburdened by the harsh realities of adulthood. But that boy had been lost somewhere along the way, replaced by a young man grappling with desperation. "Did you find anything?" Henry asked, his voice steady despite the turmoil within. Marcus shook his head, brushing droplets from his face. "Just that guy, Gabriel. He's not someone you want to mess with, Dad." Henry's stomach twisted at the name. Gabriel. The very mention sent a chill down his spine, like a cold wind sweeping through the room. He had heard whispers about the man, a shadowy figure who thrived in the underbelly of their neighborhood, a puppet master pulling strings in the lives of the vulnerable. "What do you mean?" "He's got connections, Dad. People who don't just let debts slide. If we don't pay him back soon..." Marcus trailed off, the weight of his implication hanging heavily between them. The air thickened, suffocating in its tension. Henry felt the walls closing in. "What did he want from you, Marcus?" Marcus hesitated, his gaze dropping to the floor, the shadows of their home enveloping him. "He's been patient, but I owe him a lot more than I thought. He wants me to bring him something valuable." "A favor." Henry's pulse quickened. "What kind of favor?" "I don't know, Dad, but I can't just walk away. I thought I could handle it, but..." His voice cracked, revealing a vulnerability that cut through Henry's anger like a shard of glass. "I messed up, okay? I just wanted to fix it." Henry stepped closer, the distance between them shrinking as he searched his son's face. "You didn't trust me enough to tell me what was going on. We could have faced this together, but you chose to go behind my back. I didn't think you'd understand. You always talk about keeping this house, about family, but what if it's gone? What if I lose everything?" The desperation in Marcus's voice struck a chord deep within Henry, a haunting reminder of the fears that had kept him awake at night. "You think I don't know what it's like to lose everything?" I've built this life from the ground up, and I'm not about to let it slip away because of a bad choice." Silence fell, heavy and oppressive, as they stood in the dim light of the living room. The storm outside raged on, the wind howling like lost souls. Henry could feel the weight of the world pressing down on both of them, a shared burden that threatened to fracture their fragile connection. "Then let's fix it," Marcus finally said, his voice firmer. "I don't want to keep running. I want to face this guy together." A flicker of pride ignited in Henry's chest. This was the boy he'd raised, the fighter beneath the layers of doubt. "All right," he said, his tone steady, "but we need a plan. We can't go in unprepared. I'll reach out to some old contacts. They might have information about Gabriel that we can use." Marcus nodded, though the tension in his shoulders remained. "And what if he doesn't play nice? We'll be ready to negotiate. We have to leverage what we can," Henry replied, feeling the gears of his mind start to turn. "But first, we need to gather everything we can about him. Where he hangs out, who he associates with. There has to be a weakness we can exploit." The determination in Henry's voice seemed to ignite something in Marcus. A spark of hope rekindled amidst the shadows. "I can do that. I know people at the bar downtown who might have seen him." "Good." Henry felt the rush of adrenaline coursing through him. "Let's meet back here tonight. We'll compile whatever we find and come up with a strategy. But you need to be careful, Marcus. This isn't a game." Marcus met his gaze, the fire in his eyes matching Henry's resolve. "I know. I'm not a kid anymore, Dad. I'll watch my back." As the rain continued to drum against the roof, a strange calm settled over the house. It was as if the universe had shifted, realigning their fractured relationship, pushing them toward a common goal. They were no longer just father and son. They were allies in a battle against the forces threatening to tear them apart. "Let's go," Henry said, pulling on his jacket. "We don't have time to waste." Together, they stepped out into the storm, the air thick with the scent of wet earth and the promise of change. The world outside felt different, charged with an electric energy as they moved away from the shelter of their home. The streets were slick with rain, every step a reminder of the dangers lurking in the shadows. As they made their way toward the bar, the weight of their decisions loomed large, but for the first time in a long while, Henry felt a sense of purpose. He was ready to confront whatever lay ahead, to reclaim not just their home but their bond as father and son. In the distance, the faint sound of laughter filtered through the rain, a stark contrast to the gravity of their mission. Henry glanced at Marcus, whose expression was a mix of worry and determination. With every step, they ventured deeper into the storm, ready to face the tempest raging both outside and within. As they approached the bar, the neon lights flickered, casting an eerie glow on the damp pavement, illuminating the path ahead. The air was thick with the scent of stale beer and the distant echoes of clinking glasses, a reminder of the lives intertwined in this gritty neighborhood. Henry steeled himself for what lay ahead, feeling the weight of his family's legacy on his shoulders. "Stick close to me," he murmured as they stepped inside, the warmth enveloping them like a protective cocoon. The bar buzzed with life, a cacophony of voices mingling with the soft strum of a guitar in the corner. Henry scanned the room, his instincts sharp. He could feel the tension coiling within him, prepared for the confrontation that awaited. And as he locked eyes with Marcus, he saw not just a son but a partner in this fight. Together, they would face whatever darkness lay ahead. The first step toward reclaiming their lives had begun. The wind howled outside, a mournful wail that echoed through the creaking walls of Henry's modest home. Rain lashed against the windows, each droplet a reminder of the storm brewing not just in the skies, but also within the hearts of the two men standing in the dim light of the living room. Henry's fingers trembled slightly as he clutched the edge of the coffee table, the worn oak grain rough against his skin, grounding him amid the rising tide of uncertainty. The storm outside mirrored the tempest of emotions within. It was as if nature itself was in turmoil, reflecting the chaos that had settled over their lives. "Are you sure about this?" Henry's voice came out hoarse, a whisper almost lost in the cacophony outside. He looked at Marcus, whose face was half hidden in shadow, the flickering light from the old lamp casting an almost ghostly pallor over his features. The boy's eyes, typically vibrant and full of life, now bore the weight of 1,000 unspoken regrets. Marcus had always been the light in Henry's life, a bright spark that filled their home with laughter and joy. But now, that spark seemed dimmed, overshadowed by the heavy clouds of anxiety and fear. Marcus shifted, his gaze darting around the room, as though searching for an escape route. "I wouldn't have brought it up if I didn't think it was necessary," he replied, the edge in his tone betraying a mix of desperation and defiance. "We need to confront Gabriel before he decides to come after us. I owe him more than just money, Dad." The admission hung in the air like smoke, thick and suffocating. Henry swallowed hard, the bitterness of betrayal coating his tongue. "What do you mean more than just money? What kind of favor did you agree to?" Each question felt like a dagger, piercing the fragile bond they once shared. The memories of fishing trips, family dinners, and late-night talks seemed distant, overshadowed by the grave reality that now stretched between them like an insurmountable chasm. Marcus turned away, the tension in his shoulders coiling tighter as he avoided his father's penetrating gaze. "It's complicated. I thought I could handle it. I thought I could turn things around," he murmured, almost to himself. "But now—" His voice trailed off, leaving a chasm of unspoken fears between them. The storm outside intensified, rattling the windows and creating an atmosphere thick with dread, as if the world itself was holding its breath. The house felt smaller somehow, the walls closing in as Henry wrestled with the reality of his son's choices. "You didn't just gamble with your future, Marcus. You put us both at risk," he said, his voice trembling with a mix of anger and sorrow. "This house, it's all we have left. It's not just bricks and mortar. It's our history, our family." Each word felt like a plea, a desperate attempt to reach the son he feared he was losing. "I know," Marcus snapped, finally meeting Henry's gaze with a flash of anger. "But you don't understand. I needed the money to get by. I thought—" He stopped, his breath catching as if the words were too heavy to bear. The vulnerability that flickered in his eyes was a stark contrast to the bravado he had shown moments before. The silence that followed was thick, the only sound the relentless rain tapping against the windows, each drop like a countdown to an inevitable conflict. Henry's heart raced, caught in a tumult of emotions. He wanted to reach out, to pull Marcus into a protective embrace, but the distance between them felt insurmountable, a chasm filled with unspoken fears and regrets. "Tell me everything," Henry finally said, his voice low and steady, a lifeline thrown into turbulent waters. "What do we know about Gabriel?" As he spoke, he could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on them, the air laden with the scent of rain and desperation. Marcus hesitated, his eyes flickering with uncertainty and fear. "He's not someone you want to mess with. He's connected, powerful. I thought I could borrow a little to get through a rough patch, but it escalated. I didn't realize the implications until it was too late." The gravity of his words settled heavily in the room, wrapping around them like a shroud. The words washed over Henry like cold water, chilling him to the bone. He could feel the weight of Marcus's decisions, the choices that had led them to this precipice. "What did you promise him?" he pressed, his heart pounding in his chest, each beat echoing the urgency of the moment. "I promised to help him with a job," Marcus admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "Something illegal. I thought I could back out, but he won't let me go that easily." The admission hung in the air, heavy with the implications of a life teetering on the edge of danger. Henry felt a surge of emotions, fear for his son, anger at the situation, and a profound sense of helplessness. "Illegal?" Marcus, do you understand what you're saying? This isn't just about money anymore. It's about your future, your life. His voice rose, echoing off the walls, a reflection of the turmoil raging within him. I get it, Marcus shouted, his voice cracking under the strain. But I'm in too deep. I thought I could keep it all under control. I thought I could make things right. But now… His voice broke, the vulnerability spilling out in the dim light, a stark contrast to the bravado he had shown moments before. As the rain continued to pour, Henry felt the walls of their home tightening around them. The house that had once felt like a sanctuary now transformed into a prison of their own making. He took a deep breath, trying to steady his racing thoughts. We need to come up with a plan. We can't do this alone. The realization settled in, a flicker of determination igniting within him. Marcus nodded, his expression shifting from defiance to something softer, more vulnerable. What do you mean? We need information, Henry said, his mind racing as he envisioned the steps ahead. We need to find out who Gabriel really is, what he wants from you, and how we can negotiate our way out of this. Memories of past family gatherings flickered through Henry's mind, those moments of laughter and joy now overshadowed by the darkness that loomed over them. A flicker of hope ignited in Marcus's eyes, a small spark in the darkness. You really think we can do this? He asked, a hint of disbelief coloring his voice. We have to, Henry replied, his resolve hardening like steel. This house is not just a structure. It's our home, our legacy. I won't let it slip away because of mistakes you made in a moment of desperation. His words were a balm on the open wound of their relationship, a sign that he was still willing to fight for them both. Marcus swallowed, the weight of his father's words settling heavily upon him. Okay, but how do we even start? He doesn't exactly hand out information. The tension in the room began to shift, the possibility of action sparking a fragile alliance between them. Henry rose from the couch, the worn fabric cool against his skin as he moved. We begin by reaching out to people who know him, connections, friends, anyone who might have insight into his operations. I'll start with the old neighborhood. We might know someone who knows someone. The determination in his voice filled the room, pushing back against the shadows that threatened to engulf them. The storm outside raged on, the winds howling as if echoing the turmoil in their hearts. It felt like a reckoning, a moment when everything they had taken for granted was laid bare before them. And if we find out he's not willing to negotiate? Marcus asked, his voice barely above a whisper, the uncertainty palpable. Henry paused, the gravity of the situation settling upon him like a shroud. Then we prepare ourselves for the worst. We'll find a way to protect ourselves, to protect our home. But we're not giving up without a fight. The words felt like a promise, a vow that they would stand together against whatever storm awaited them. Outside, the storm raged on, a tempest that mirrored the turmoil within. The wind howled, rattling the windows like an ominous warning. But for the first time in what felt like an eternity, Henry sensed a shift, a subtle transformation from despair to a quiet strength. They were no longer just father and son. They were allies united in a common cause. As the rain continued to pour, Henry felt an ember of hope flicker to life in the depths of his heart. They would face Gabriel together, armed not just with a plan, but with the unyielding resolve to reclaim what was rightfully theirs. They had been through tough times before, and while this was undoubtedly the darkest hour, they were determined to emerge on the other side. The shadows that had loomed over their lives began to recede, giving way to the possibility of a new dawn. Henry felt a surge of love for Marcus, a fierce protectiveness that surged through his veins. He would do whatever it took to keep his son safe, to ensure that the mistakes of the past did not define their future. In that moment, as the storm howled outside, Henry and Marcus stood together, a united front against the chaos that threatened to engulf them. They were more than just father and son. They were warriors, ready to battle the demons that sought to tear them apart. And as the rain continued to fall, they prepared to fight for their family, their home, and their legacy. The rain begins to fall, a soft patter that quickly transforms into a relentless downpour, drumming against the roof of the modest home. The tension between Henry and Marcus hangs heavy in the air, palpable like the humidity that surrounds them. A storm is brewing outside, but the tempest within feels far more destructive. Henry's heart races as he watches Marcus pace on the porch, the shadows of uncertainty flickering across his son's face. The boy's brow is furrowed, and his hands clench and unclench, as if he's trying to grasp something intangible. Control, perhaps, or the waning respect of his father. "Dad, you don't understand," Marcus says, his voice strained, barely rising above the sound of the rain. "This is my chance. If I don't do this, I'll drown in debt. Gabriel's not just some thug. He's connected. He can help me. But at what cost?" Henry interjects, his voice steady but tinged with desperation. He steps closer, the wooden porch creaking beneath his weight, the scent of wet wood and impending conflict filling his nostrils. "You're talking about selling our home, Marcus. This isn't just a piece of property. It's our legacy. It's a burden." Marcus snaps, cutting through Henry's words like a knife. The anger in his tone is raw, a reflection of his panic. "You don't get it. You think holding onto this place will save us? It's a crumbling ruin, and all it does is tie us down. I can't live in your shadow forever." Henry feels the sting of those words, each one a reminder of the chasm that has formed between them. "I'm not trying to keep you in my shadow. I'm trying to protect you. This isn't just about the house. It's about who you become. Getting involved with someone like Gabriel, it's dangerous." The rain intensifies, lashing against the windows, mirroring the storm of emotions swirling inside Henry. The air thickens with the scent of earth and rain, a reminder of the life that once flourished around them, of laughter, of family dinners, of warmth. Now it feels as though that warmth is slipping away, leaving behind only a chill. "Dangerous." Marcus laughs, but it's a hollow sound, devoid of humor. "You think I'm afraid of danger? I've lived it every day since I graduated. I'm drowning, Dad. I need to take risks. You're the one who's afraid to change." Henry's mind races, searching for the right words to bridge the chasm that seems to widen with every heated exchange. "Change doesn't have to come at the expense of your values. You're better than this." "Better than what?" "Better than doing what it takes to survive." Marcus's voice rises, raw with desperation. "You don't understand what it's like out there. I can't just sit and wait for life to hand me a break. I have to take it." Suddenly, the air shifts, and a gust of wind howls as if echoing Marcus's turmoil. The storm outside seems to breathe in tandem with their conflict, a living entity that knows the weight of their choices. Henry watches his son, a mix of fear and sorrow flooding his heart. He can see the boy he raised, caught in the currents of a world that feels larger than both of them. "Marcus." Henry's voice softens, the urgency giving way to a weary resolve. "I know you're scared. I am too. But this isn't the solution. We can find another way. We can face this together." Marcus's posture shifts, the defiance slowly fading as he looks away, gazing into the rain-drenched street. "Together? You think we can just go back to what it was? You don't know what I've done to get here. I've made promises, Dad, to Gabriel. And if I don't follow through..." His voice trails off, the weight of unspoken consequences hanging in the air. Henry's heart sinks, the shadows of doubt creeping in. "What did you promise him, Marcus? What kind of favor?" The question hangs heavily between them, the answer lurking just beyond the edge of Marcus's guarded expression. "I can't tell you," Marcus replies, his voice barely above a whisper, the vulnerability cracking through his bravado. "You wouldn't understand." The rain continues to pour, a constant reminder of their predicament, and Henry feels the distance between them growing again. He steps forward, yearning to bridge that gap. "Try me. I want to help, but you have to trust me." For a moment, Marcus stands frozen, the storm raging around them, his eyes searching his father's face for something. Understanding, perhaps, or a flicker of hope. But the storm inside him clouds his judgment, and he shakes his head. "You can't help me with this. You have to let me handle it." Henry's chest tightens, the cold truth settling in. "Then what do you want me to do? Just stand by and watch you make a choice that could ruin you?" Marcus turns abruptly, the tension in his shoulders coiling like a spring. "Maybe you should have thought about that before you refused to let me go." His words cut deep, a reminder of all the times Henry had tried to keep his son safe, to shield him from the harsh realities of life. And yet, here they stand, on the brink of a decision that could irrevocably fracture their bond. "Marcus," Henry pleads, desperation lacing his voice, "I understand wanting to break free, but this isn't the way. You're trading your safety for a facade of control. Please, let's talk to someone, anyone, who can help us navigate this." Marcus's jaw clenches, the silence stretching painfully between them, filled only by the relentless patter of rain against the porch. "I can't," he finally whispers, his voice trembling. "I can't risk it. I can't risk you." The words hang heavy, a weight that threatens to pull Henry under. He reaches out, but Marcus flinches away, the distance between them feeling insurmountable. "If you do this, if you go through with Gabriel," Henry's voice falters, the fear of losing his son clawing at his insides, "I don't think I can follow you down that path." With that, Marcus turns, retreating into the shadows of the house, leaving Henry alone on the porch, the storm raging around him. The rain falls heavier now, each drop a reminder of the love and legacy they are on the verge of losing. Henry stands there, feeling the chill seep into his bones as the door clicks shut behind Marcus. He closes his eyes, inhaling deeply, the scent of rain mingling with the memories of laughter that still echo within those walls. He knows he must act. The stakes are too high, and time is slipping away. He can't allow Marcus to make a choice that will lead him down a road of no return. With a newfound determination, Henry steps back inside, shaking off the rain as he closes the door behind him. The house feels colder, emptier, but he knows he must fight for their future. He needs a plan, one that involves more than just confronting Gabriel. It requires a strategy that will bring his son back to the light. As he moves through the dimly lit rooms, each step reverberates with the weight of his resolve. He reaches for his phone, the glow illuminating his face, and begins to search for information on Gabriel. The rain pounds against the windows, but within him, a fire ignites, a quiet strength that refuses to let go of hope. He will not let this storm take everything from him. Not now, not ever. The storm had settled into a steady rhythm, the rain drumming against the roof like a restless heart. Henry stood in the living room, the familiar scent of old wood and worn upholstery wrapping around him like a comforting embrace. Yet today that embrace felt suffocating. He glanced at the framed photographs lining the mantel. Smiling faces frozen in time, moments of love and laughter now weighed down by the gravity of the present. He could almost hear the echoes of their past conversations, the warmth of those memories starkly contrasting with the chill in the air. "Dad!" Marcus's voice cut through the thick silence, raw and unsteady. It held a tremor that sent a ripple of unease through Henry's chest. He turned to see his son standing at the edge of the room, his hands shoved deep in his pockets, posture rigid. The youthful bravado that once defined Marcus had dimmed, replaced by a shadow of guilt and uncertainty. "Let's talk," Henry said, his tone steady despite the tempest brewing inside him. He motioned for Marcus to sit at the worn-out dining table, the centerpiece of countless family meals, now an unwitting witness to their unraveling. Marcus shuffled to the table, the wood creaking beneath the weight of their shared tension. He slumped into a chair, the fabric of his jeans whispering against the upholstery. "I know you don't want to hear this," he began, his voice barely above a whisper. "But I think selling the house is the only way out." Henry leaned against the table, the cool surface grounding him as he fought against the whirlpool of emotion threatening to pull him under. "You think I want this? You think I want to lose what your grandfather worked so hard for?" The words tumbled out, fierce but edged with pain. "This house isn't just walls and a roof, Marcus. It's our history. It's everything." Marcus flinched, his expression shifting from defiance to desperation. "What history?" he shot back, fists clenching on the table. "You act like it's some sacred relic, but it's just a house. We're drowning, Dad. I don't have time to deal with sentimentality. Gabriel, he won't wait much longer. He's not the type to just let things slide." The mention of Gabriel sent a shudder through Henry. He had spent the night mulling over the name, the implications swirling like the storm clouds outside. He could feel the weight of Marcus's debt pressing down on him, a tangible force that threatened to crush them both. "What did you promise him?" Henry asked, his voice low, a cautious whisper of the storm brewing outside. Marcus hesitated, his gaze dropping to the table. I didn't mean to get in this deep. Started with a loan just to cover some expenses, but then it spiraled. Gabriel doesn't play nice, Dad. You don't understand what he's capable of." Henry's heart raced, the tension in the air thickening, swirling like the rain outside. "Then we need to find another way," he said, determination threading through his voice. "I'll use my contacts. We can figure this out. I won't let you sell this house." Marcus's eyes flickered with something. Hope? Anger? And what if your contacts can't help? What if they're just as corrupt as Gabriel? "You don't know what I've been through." There was a raw edge to his words, a plea hidden beneath layers of frustration. For a moment, silence enveloped them, the storm outside mirroring the tempest within. Henry's mind raced, grappling with the gravity of their situation. He had to tread carefully. The last thing he wanted was to drive Marcus away further. "Let me help you. We'll face this together. But you have to be honest with me. No more secrets." Marcus clenched his jaw, the tension palpable. "I don't know if I can. I was trying to protect you." "Protect me?" Henry echoed, incredulity rising. "By selling our home? By getting involved with someone like Gabriel? You don't need to protect me, Marcus. You're my son. We're in this together, remember?" Marcus's eyes flickered with something. Understanding, perhaps, or a glimmer of the boy Henry once knew. "I just thought, if I could fix my problems, you wouldn't have to worry. I didn't want to drag you into this mess." The rain intensified, a wild symphony of sound that masked the tension in the room. Henry took a deep breath, wading through his own tumultuous thoughts. "You're not dragging me into anything. You're my son, and I care about you. But we have to be smart about this." A moment of stillness passed between them, charged with unspoken words. Henry felt the weight of the world on his shoulders, the responsibility, the love, the fear. He was staring down the precipice of loss, and the thought of losing Marcus to desperation was a wound he couldn't bear. "Okay," Marcus said, his voice steadier now, like the calm after the storm. "But I need you to understand. Gabriel isn't going to let this go easily. He's dangerous, Dad. He's not just a guy I owe money to. He's a whole world I stumbled into." Henry nodded, his heart heavy but resolute. "Then we'll find a way to navigate that world together. Let's gather information. I have some old friends who might know more about him. If I can learn what he's after, maybe we can negotiate." The shadows in Marcus's eyes lightened slightly, and Henry felt a flicker of hope spark between them, like the first rays of sunlight breaking through a stormy sky. "Do you really think they'll help?" "I have to believe they will. They know the value of family, just like we do. They'll understand what's at stake. Henry replied, his voice firm. The words settled in the air, a promise wrapped in determination. As the rain poured relentlessly outside, a new kind of silence enveloped them, one filled with possibility. Henry could feel the weight of their shared struggle lifting, if only slightly. He reached across the table, placing his hand over Marcus's. We'll get through this. Together. Marcus looked at their hands, the connection between them palpable, a lifeline in the storm. Together, he echoed, and for the first time in a long while, the word felt like a solid foundation beneath them. The storm raged on outside, but within the modest home, a fragile truce began to blossom. Henry felt the air shift, the tension loosening its grip as they began to chart a path forward. He knew the journey ahead would be fraught with challenges, but for the first time, he felt a flicker of strength igniting within him, a quiet resolve that whispered of hope. As the rain drummed against the roof, Henry's thoughts drifted to the tangled web of Gabriel's influence. He had seen too many families broken apart by men like him, men who thrived on fear and desperation. But he was no longer willing to stand on the sidelines. He had his son to protect, and he would do whatever it took to keep their legacy alive. Let's start tonight, Henry said, the urgency in his voice matching the rhythm of the rain. We'll make a plan. I'll reach out to some people. We need to know what we're dealing with. Marcus nodded, determination hardening his features. Yeah, okay. I'll do some digging on my end too. I know some of the guys from the neighborhood have dealt with him. Maybe they can give us some insight. As they began to strategize, the rain continued to fall outside, but inside, the air felt lighter. They were still facing the storm, but now they were facing it together. The past may have been fraught with pain and betrayal, but in this moment, there was a shared commitment to reclaiming their future. And as the darkness outside rumbled with thunder, Henry couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. A storm they would weather, hand in hand. The storm loomed like a great beast on the horizon, dark clouds swirling, pregnant with the promise of rain. Henry stood at the kitchen window, staring out into the gathering gloom, his heart racing with a mixture of dread and determination. The air inside the house felt thick, as if it too were holding its breath, waiting for the inevitable clash that would come when Marcus arrived home from his clandestine meeting with Gabriel. The familiar sense of home wrapped around him, freshly brewed coffee mingling with the musty aroma of old wood and memories. As he took a deep breath, the warmth of the coffee slid down his throat, a fleeting comfort against the chill that crept in from outside. He could almost hear the echoes of laughter that once filled these walls, memories of family dinners and lazy Sunday afternoons. But now, the weight of betrayal hung in the air like a storm cloud, ready to burst. He turned away from the window, his mind racing. What if Marcus's recklessness had gone too far? What if Gabriel had already sunk his claws into his son, convincing him that there was no way out except through more lies? The thought made Henry's stomach churn. He had spent his life building a foundation of trust and security for Marcus, only to watch it teeter on the edge of collapse. The clock on the wall ticked ominously, each second a reminder of the urgency of their situation. Henry moved to the worn wooden table, its surface scarred with the marks of countless family decisions, some joyous, others fraught with tension. He needed a plan, a way to confront Gabriel, to reclaim the narrative of their lives. But how could he do that without pushing Marcus further into the shadows? As if summoned by his thoughts, the sound of the front door creaking open broke the silence. Henry's heart raced as he turned, bracing himself. Marcus stepped inside, his face shadowed by the dim light of the hallway, the tension radiating off him like heat from a furnace. "Dad," Marcus said, his voice a mixture of defiance and uncertainty. He shifted uncomfortably on his feet, the weight of the world resting on his narrow shoulders. "We need to talk." Henry nodded, gesturing for Marcus to join him at the table. "I'm glad you're home. I was worried." The words felt hollow, but he forced them out, determined to keep the conversation civil. "I didn't want you to worry," Marcus replied, his tone sharp. He dropped into a chair, running a hand through his tousled hair. "But I had to meet him. He's not someone we can just ignore." The air between them crackled with tension. Henry leaned forward, his hands gripping the edge of the table. "What did he say? What does he want from you?" Marcus looked away, his gaze flickering to the floor, as if the weight of his thoughts pressed him down. "He wants the money I owe, obviously, but he also wants me to help him with something else. Something big." Henry felt a cold knot form in his stomach. "What kind of something big?" "Something illegal," Marcus admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "He's into some dark stuff, Dad. He wants me to help him move things. I don't know what. I thought I could make enough to pay him off and get out. But now it feels like I've stepped into a trap." Henry's heart sank. The choices Marcus had made were spiraling out of control, and the thought of his son getting deeper into Gabriel's world made his blood run cold. "You need to get out now, Marcus. This isn't just about the money. It's about your safety. You don't know what he's capable of." "I know," Marcus snapped, his frustration boiling over. "But it's too late. I'm in too deep. I thought I could handle it, but I was wrong. I can't just walk away." A heavy silence settled between them, thick with unspoken fears. Henry struggled to keep his voice steady. "We can fight this together. I've been doing some digging, and I think I have a way to confront Gabriel. We need to find out what he's really after." Marcus's eyes widened, a flicker of hope mingling with disbelief. "You want to confront him? You don't even know what he's capable of." "I know that I'm not going to let him take our home, or you, without a fight," Henry replied, his voice firm yet tinged with desperation. "This house has been in our family for generations. It's not just bricks and mortar. It's our legacy. I won't let it crumble under the weight of your mistakes or his threats. Dad, this isn't just about the house. It's about me. I messed up. I should have never." "I know you're scared," Henry interrupted, his heart aching for his son. "But giving in to fear won't help. We need to stand together, face this head-on. I won't let you go through this alone." The storm outside rumbled, sending a shiver through the window panes. For a moment, the tension in the room felt like an electric charge, a moment suspended in time where father and son stood on the precipice of understanding. Marcus looked up, his defenses beginning to crack. "I just wanted to provide for us. I thought I could fix everything." Henry's heart softened, and he could see the boy he used to know. A boy who believed in the power of dreams, who wasn't afraid to hope. "You're not alone in this, Marcus. We can find a way out together. But you need to trust me." After a long pause, Marcus nodded, albeit reluctantly. "Okay, what's the plan?" Henry drew a deep breath, the scent of coffee mingling with the tension in the air. "I've done some research on Gabriel. He's not just a loan shark. He's involved in a network of shady deals that stretch far beyond what you've seen. We need to gather evidence. We need to expose him." Marcus shifted in his seat, his expression a mix of apprehension and curiosity. "How do we even start?" "We'll begin by talking to people in the neighborhood," Henry suggested. "There are whispers about him. We need to learn everything we can without attracting attention. After that, we figure out our next steps." The flickering light from the kitchen bulb cast shadows across Marcus's face, highlighting the conflict within him. "What if he finds out? What if he comes after us?" Henry leaned forward, his voice steady but urgent. "Then we'll be ready. I won't let him intimidate us. This is our life, Marcus. We have to fight for it." As the first raindrops began to patter against the roof, a surge of resolve washed over them. The storm outside mirrored the chaos within, but for the first time in a long while, Henry felt a flicker of hope. They were in this together, and that made them stronger. "Let's get to work," Marcus said, his voice low but determined. Henry nodded, pride swelling in his chest. It wasn't the resolution he had envisioned, but it was a start, a fragile thread of connection woven through the tumult of their lives. Together, they would face the shadows of their past and the storm that awaited them. As they began to map out their plan, the atmosphere shifted, the storm outside raging against the world while inside, a quiet strength began to take root. The house, their legacy, stood resilient against the impending chaos, just as they would. Together, they would reclaim their lives and confront the man who had threatened everything they held dear. The rain began to fall in earnest, heavy droplets tapping against the windows like the anxious heartbeat of the house itself. Inside, the air was thick with tension. The scent of damp would mingling with the faint aroma of old books and lingering memories. Henry stood at the kitchen table, the surface cluttered with papers, bills, notes, and the remnants of their plans. He felt the weight of betrayal pressing on his chest, each letter and number a reminder of the precarious edge on which they balanced. "Dad, I know this sounds insane," Marcus said, his voice breaking the silence that hung between them like a heavy fog. He leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed tightly over his chest. The storm outside intensified, thunder rumbling like a distant warning. But it was nothing compared to the storm brewing within their small kitchen. "What you're suggesting isn't just insane, Marcus. It's dangerous," Henry replied, his tone steady but edged with concern. He could see the determination in his son's eyes, a flicker of defiance that reminded him of his own youthful bravado. The boy was standing at the precipice of a choice that could either save them or shatter the fragile bond they were trying to rebuild. "We can't just march over to Gabriel's and demand answers. He's not a man you can reason with." Marcus pushed away from the door, his frustration palpable. "And what's your plan? Wait for him to come knocking? He's already taken everything else from us. I won't let him take this house, too." His voice rose, slicing through the tension thicker than the storm clouds outside. Henry's heart sank at the sight of his son, the boy he had raised, now teetering on the edge of a cliff he had long feared. "You don't understand what you're dealing with. Gabriel isn't just a lone shark. He's a monster," Marcus interrupted, his eyes blazing. "I know that, but I'm tired of being afraid. I'm tired of feeling like we're waiting for the next blow to fall. I need to take control of my life. Dad, this is my chance. Your chance." Henry felt a surge of anger and despair. "You think this is about you? This is about our family, our legacy. You think I want to lose this place? I fought for it. For you." His voice softened as he stepped closer, the storm inside him matching the tempest outside. "But we can't face him without a plan. We need to be smart about this." The room fell silent, the only sound the relentless rain against the glass, a steady reminder of their plight. Marcus's shoulders slumped, and the fire in his eyes flickered, replaced by a deep-seated vulnerability. "What if I'm not strong enough to fight him? What if I'm just running?" Henry reached out, placing a hand on Marcus's shoulder. "It's not about strength, son. It's about strategy. We can't just charge in blindly. We need to gather information, understand what we're up against." He could feel the weight of his son's fear and uncertainty, mirrored in his own heart. "Let's take a step back. We'll figure this out together." Marcus nodded slowly, the defiance in his posture softening. "Okay, but we need to act fast. Gabriel's not going to wait forever." As they began to sift through the papers again, the rain transformed into a torrential downpour, the sound a cacophony that filled the room. Outside, the world blurred into a haze of gray, yet inside, Henry felt a flicker of hope, a tiny ember that refused to be extinguished. They were still standing, still fighting, and that in itself was a victory. "Let's make a list of what we know about Gabriel," Henry suggested, pulling a blank sheet of paper toward him. "We'll find out everything we can about his operations. Who does he work with? Who are his enemies? We need to understand the landscape before we start to move. Right?" Marcus said, leaning over the table, his fingers tapping against the wood as if he were drawing a map. He's got connections everywhere. The guys he hangs out with are no joke. I've seen them in the neighborhood, and they're not the type you want to cross. Henry nodded, remembering the faces that seemed to lurk in the shadows, the ones that made the hairs on the back of his neck stand on end. We can use that to our advantage, if we can find a way to turn his allies against him. Wait, Marcus interrupted, his face suddenly serious. What if we don't go after him directly? What if we find someone who knows him, someone who's had dealings with him before? Maybe they can give us insight. That's a good idea, Henry replied, feeling a spark of excitement. But who do we know? We don't exactly run in the same circles. Marcus thought for a moment, chewing on his lower lip. What about that guy, Sam? He used to work with Gabriel. I heard he got out of the game a few months ago. Maybe he'd be willing to talk. Sam, Henry mused, recalling the man's face from a chance encounter at a neighborhood barbecue. He was always a bit of a shady character, but if he's out, he might have some valuable information. They began jotting down ideas, their thoughts flowing more freely now, the storm outside a backdrop to their growing resolve. With each word written on the paper, the weight of their situation began to feel a little lighter, as if they were slowly chiseling away at the stone that had trapped them for so long. Suddenly, a loud crash of thunder shook the house, causing both of them to jump. The lights flickered momentarily, and Henry's heart raced. In that moment of darkness, he felt the enormity of their situation. How quickly everything could change, how fragile their safety felt. We should get going, Marcus said, glancing at the clock. If Sam's home, we should catch him while we can. Right? Henry agreed, fighting against the sense of dread creeping into his thoughts. Let's grab our coats. As they moved toward the door, the storm outside roared, the wind whipping around them like an angry beast. They stepped into the downpour, the cold rain biting at their skin, but it felt invigorating, a reminder that they were alive, that they still had a chance to reclaim their lives. The streets were slick, the world transformed into a shimmering reflection of neon lights and dark shadows. They navigated through the neighborhood, the familiar sights twisted by the storm's fury, each step echoing with both uncertainty and determination. Do you think Sam will help us? Marcus asked, his voice barely rising above the sound of the rain. I hope so, Henry replied, his thoughts racing. But we need to be careful. Trust is a rare commodity in this world. As they approached Sam's apartment, the building loomed ahead, its exterior worn and cracked like the lives of those who inhabited it. They hurried inside, shaking off the rain as they entered the dimly lit lobby. The air was thick with the smell of mildew and desperation, a stark reminder of the struggles that lay ahead. Henry's heart raced as they climbed the stairs, each step a testament to their resolve. Just remember, we're here for information. We need to keep our heads clear. Marcus nodded, but Henry could see the tension in his son's posture, the anxiety woven through him like a thread. They reached Sam's door, and Henry felt the weight of the moment settle upon him. He knocked, the sound echoing in the silence that followed. After a moment, they heard shuffling from inside, and the door creaked open. Sam appeared, his disheveled hair and weary eyes reflecting the toll life had taken. What do you want? He grunted, suspicion etched into his features. Sam, Henry began, trying to keep his voice steady. We need to talk. It's important. The rain continued to pour outside, a relentless reminder of the storm they were all caught in, both outside and within. In this moment, Henry knew they were on the brink of something significant. They might not have all the answers yet, but they were no longer waiting for the storm to pass. They were determined to face it head-on. The rain began to fall, a gentle patter that quickly escalated into a full-fledged downpour, drumming against the roof like 1,000 anxious hearts. Henry stood at the window, his fingers pressed against the cool glass, watching the world outside dissolve into a blur of gray. The street lamps flickered, casting an eerie glow through the sheets of rain, and the air felt electric, charged with the promise of conflict. Inside, the house felt more like a tomb than a sanctuary. The walls, once adorned with laughter and warmth, now hung heavy with the specter of Marcus's choices. Henry's heart ached as he thought of the legacy that was at risk, the memories of family dinners, birthday parties, and quiet evenings spent together. Would Marcus really sell this home, their home, to escape the clutches of Gabriel? He turned away from the window, the resolve beginning to crystallize within him. This was no longer just about the house. It was about their future, about the man his son was becoming. Henry's mind raced back to their last conversation. "We have to confront Gabriel," Marcus had said, his voice laced with urgency and a hint of defiance. But could they truly face the monster Marcus had unwittingly invited into their lives? A knock at the door jolted him from his thoughts. It was Sam, his old friend, and the last remnant of the community they once knew. Sam stood there, drenched but steadfast, his face a mask of concern and determination. "Henry," he said, stepping inside and shaking off the rain like a dog. "I got your message. We need to talk." "Yeah," Henry replied, his voice low. He gestured for Sam to sit at the small kitchen table, the same table where countless decisions had been made over the years. "We need to know what we're dealing with." As Sam settled into a chair, the weight of the moment hung heavy between them. The air was thick with the scent of wet wood and the faint trace of old coffee, a reminder of their shared history. "I've heard things about Gabriel," Sam began, his voice steady but tinged with unease. "He's not just some loan shark. He's connected. Dangerous." "Dangerous how?" Henry leaned forward, his heart racing. The quiet strength he had cultivated over the years felt as fragile as the porcelain figurines that lined the shelves, each one a relic of a happier time. "People disappear when they cross him," Sam replied, his eyes narrowing. "I know he's got a grip on this neighborhood. He's got friends in high places, and he doesn't take kindly to threats or challenges. If you're thinking about going against him, you need to be prepared for the worst." "Marcus thinks he can handle it," Henry said, the words tasting bitter on his tongue. "He thinks he's clever enough to outsmart Gabriel." Sam shook his head. "Kid's got guts, but guts won't save him from a man like that. You need to get through to Marcus. He needs to understand what's at stake." Henry felt a wave of despair wash over him. How could he make Marcus see the truth? The boy was blinded by desperation, convinced that selling the house was the only way out. "I don't know how to reach him," he admitted, his voice cracking under the weight of his emotions. "He's so far gone." "Then let's show him what he's up against," Sam suggested, a flicker of determination igniting in his eyes. "Let's gather some intel. We can't confront Gabriel without knowing his weaknesses." As the rain lashed against the windows, Henry nodded, feeling a spark of hope. "Okay, let's do it." The resolve began to build within him, solidifying into something tangible. They'd need allies and they'd need a plan. "Do you still have contacts in the neighborhood?" Henry asked, his mind racing with possibilities. "Yeah, a few. I can reach out," Sam replied. "But we need to be discreet. Gabriel has eyes everywhere." Henry leaned back in his chair, the wood creaking beneath him, and closed his eyes for a moment. He could almost hear the echoes of laughter from the past, the warmth of family gatherings, and the safety that had once enveloped them. He opened his eyes, determination coursing through him. "Let's meet back here tonight after you've made your calls. We'll need to have a strategy." As Sam stood to leave, a sudden flash of lightning illuminated the kitchen, momentarily casting everything in stark relief. Henry's heart raced, not just from the storm but from the storm brewing within his own life. "Sam," he called out, stopping him at the door. "Thank you for coming. Just remember, Henry, family comes first. You're not in this alone." Sam replied, a reassuring hand on Henry's shoulder before disappearing into the tempest outside. Left alone, Henry gazed out at the rain-soaked street once more. He thought of Marcus and the choices that lay ahead. He could feel the weight of the world pressing down on him, but amidst the worry and fear, a quiet strength began to grow. This house, this home, was not just a collection of bricks and mortar. It was a fortress of memories, a testament to the battles fought and won. He would do everything in his power to protect it. Hours slipped by as the rain continued its relentless descent. Henry busied himself in the kitchen, preparing a simple meal, but his mind was elsewhere, on Marcus and the impending confrontation with Gabriel. He wondered how his son would react when faced with the truth. Would he see the danger lurking behind the bravado, or would he rush headlong into the fray, believing he could outmaneuver a man who thrived in the shadows? The clock ticked away, each second amplifying the tension in the air. Finally, just as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, there came a knock at the door. His heart skipped. "Marcus!" Henry called out, opening the door to find his son standing there, drenched and weary, yet resolute. "Dad," Marcus said, stepping inside, shaking off the rain like a wild animal. "I need to talk." Henry nodded, sensing the gravity of the moment. "We need to talk too." As they settled into the kitchen, the atmosphere thickened, the air heavy with unspoken words and unresolved tension. "I've been thinking about Gabriel," Marcus began, his voice low but steady. "I can't just let him dictate my life. I want to fight back." "Marcus," Henry interjected, his heart racing, "you need to understand what you're risking. This isn't just about you anymore. It's about us, our home." "I know," Marcus replied, his eyes fierce. "But if we don't confront him now, he'll just keep tightening the noose around my neck. I can't live like this." Henry felt a surge of frustration mixed with a deep-seated fear. "And what about the consequences? Do you think he'll just let you walk away if you challenge him?" Marcus's jaw clenched, a flicker of defiance crossing his face. "I'm willing to take that risk. I won't let him take everything from us." "Then we need a plan," Henry said, resolve edging into his voice. "Sam's helping. We'll gather information, find out what we're dealing with. But you have to promise me something. Promise you'll listen." For a moment, they both stood there, the weight of their shared fears hanging in the air. Then Marcus nodded, albeit reluctantly. "Okay, I'll listen." "Good," Henry breathed, feeling a small measure of relief. "Tonight we'll start laying the groundwork. Together." As they prepared to face the storm, both outside and within, the rain continued to fall, relentless and rhythmic, a reminder of the challenges that lay ahead. But in that moment, amidst the chaos, there was a flicker of hope. Together, they would fight back against the darkness, determined to reclaim their lives, their home, and their future.